Sarah Chen looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of the Tech News Network studio. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her blazer. This interview could make her career. After 3 years of covering smaller tech stories, she had finally landed a sit-down with Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. The producer, Mark Wilson, knocked on the door. "5 minutes, Sarah. Remember what we talked about. We need moments that will go viral. Don't let him just recite company talking points." Sarah nodded. "I've done my research. I won't let him off easy." The Tech News studio buzzed with activity. This was their biggest interview of the year, timed perfectly with Google's annual developer conference. Lights were adjusted, sound levels checked twice. The blue chairs positioned carefully with the Google logo visible in the background. Sarah took her seat, reviewing her notes one last time. Her strategy was clear. Press Pichai hard on the recent controversies about Google's AI initiatives. The critics claimed the technology was advancing too quickly without proper safety measures. Sarah had read all the reports, some of which contained technical details she didn't fully understand, but she couldn't admit that now. Sundar Pichai entered the studio, dressed in a simple blue button-up shirt and dark pants. He greeted everyone with a warm smile and handshake. Sarah was surprised by his humble demeanor. For someone running one of the most powerful companies in the world, he seemed remarkably ordinary. "Thank you for making time for us today, Mr. Pichai," Sarah said as the cameras began rolling. "Please call me Sundar," he replied with a gentle smile. The interview began with standard questions about Google's latest products. Sarah felt the conversation wasn't making the impact her producer wanted. She needed to push harder. "Let's talk about Project Quantum," she said, referring to Google's latest initiative. "Many experts are saying your claims about quantum computing are exaggerated. How do you respond?" Pichai leaned forward. "That's a fair question. Quantum computing is difficult to explain because it operates on principles very different from classical computing." He began describing how quantum bits could exist in multiple states simultaneously, unlike traditional computer bits. As he spoke about quantum superposition and entanglement, Sarah noticed her producer making the wrap-it-up gesture from behind the camera. "So you're saying these computers can basically be in two places at once?" Sarah interrupted with a slight laugh. "That sounds more like science fiction than reality." The studio went quiet. One of the camera operators looked down uncomfortably. Sarah had broken the first rule of interviews, showing disrespect to the guest. She immediately regretted her tone, but it was too late. For a moment, Pichai looked surprised. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of becoming defensive or annoyed, a small smile appeared on his face. "You know, I had the same reaction when I first learned about quantum mechanics," he said kindly. "It does sound impossible, doesn't it? That's what makes it so fascinating." Sarah felt a wave of relief, but also shame. She had tried to make him look foolish, and instead, he had responded with understanding. The interview continued, but Sarah could feel that something had shifted. Pichai wasn't treating her like an adversary. He was treating her like someone worthy of explanation, someone he wanted to help understand. By the end of the first segment, Sarah realized that this interview was going to be very different from what she had planned. And as they paused for a commercial break, she had no idea what was coming next. When the cameras started rolling again after the commercial break, Sarah Chen shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her earlier laugh at Pichai's explanation still echoed in her mind. She needed to regain control of the interview. "Let's move on to discuss Google's AI safety measures," she said, flipping through her notes. "Actually," Pichai responded with a gentle smile, "I think your viewers might benefit if we clarify quantum computing first. It's important they understand what we're really doing." The producer gave Sarah a quick thumbs up from behind the camera. This wasn't going according to her plan, but at least it might be interesting. "Sure," Sarah said, trying to sound confident. "But could you keep it simple? Not everyone has a PhD from Stanford." Several people in the studio winced at her tone. Sarah was digging herself deeper, and she knew it. But something about Pichai's calm confidence made her feel defensive. "Of course." Pichai nodded. "In fact, I find that the simpler the explanation, the better I understand something myself." He looked directly into the camera. "Imagine you're trying to find your way out of a huge maze. A regular computer would try one path, then another, then another. But a quantum computer is like having millions of copies of yourself, all exploring different paths at the same time. Sarah couldn't help but interrupt again. So you're saying Google has built a computer that creates copies of people? She let out another laugh, this one louder than before. I'm sorry, but that's just not copies of people, Pichai corrected patiently. It was an analogy. Let me try a different approach. Sarah noticed a change in the room. The camera operators were no longer looking at her. They were focused on Pichai. Her producer had stopped making gestures and was watching with interest. Pichai pulled a pen from his pocket. May I? He asked, gesturing to Sarah's notepad. Sure, she said, sliding it toward him. He quickly sketched 2 circles on the paper. This is a bit that a regular computer uses. It's either 0 or 1, on or off. He drew a sphere next. But a quantum bit or qubit is like this. It can be 0, 1, or any combination of both until we measure it. As he continued drawing and explaining, Sarah felt her embarrassment turning into genuine fascination. The concept was starting to make sense, and she could see why her dismissive laughter had been so misplaced. So last year, Pichai continued, our team achieved quantum supremacy, solving a problem in minutes that would take the world's fastest supercomputer thousands of years. A technician in the back of the studio whispered, holy shit, that's actually true. I read the paper. Sarah realized the gravity of her mistake. She had laughed at one of the most significant technological breakthroughs in history because it sounded strange to her. Worse, she had done it on live television. I didn't realize, she stammered. Most people don't, Pichai said kindly. That's why communication is so important in tech. When things sound impossible, our first reaction is often disbelief. The red light on camera 1 was blinking, indicating they were heading to another commercial break soon. Before we pause, Pichai said, would it help if I showed a practical example of what this technology could mean for everyday people? Sarah nodded, grateful for the chance to salvage the interview. Yes, I think the viewers would appreciate that. Perfect, Pichai said, reaching into his pocket. When we come back, I'll show you something we've been working on that might change how you see the future. As the commercial break sign lit up, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her producer. Whatever he's about to show, let him do it. This is getting good. Sarah took a deep breath. The interview had gone completely off her script, but for the first time that day, she felt like that might be a good thing. When the red light on the camera blinked back on, Sarah Chen noticed that more crew members had gathered around the studio. Word had spread through the building that something unexpected was happening in the Pichai interview. Even the network's tech reporter, who was supposed to be preparing for his own segment, stood watching from the doorway. Welcome back to our exclusive interview with Google CEO Sundar Pichai, Sarah said, her voice steadier now. Mr. Pichai was about to show us a practical application of quantum computing. Pichai nodded and pulled out what looked like an ordinary smartphone. This is a prototype we've been developing. It's not quantum-powered itself, that would require extreme cooling systems, but it connects to our quantum computers through the cloud. He placed the phone on the table between them. May I ask you a question, Sarah? Of course, she replied, surprised by the shift. What would you say is the biggest challenge in your daily work as a journalist? Sarah thought for a moment. She could give a safe answer, but after her earlier missteps, she decided honesty was best. Processing information quickly. There's so much data and news breaking every minute, and I need to understand complex topics fast enough to ask intelligent questions. Pichai smiled. That's exactly the kind of problem quantum computing can help with. He tapped the screen of his phone. This app is connected to our quantum system. I'm going to ask it to analyze all public research on climate change published in the last month and identify the 3 most significant new findings. The phone screen lit up with activity. In less than 5 seconds, it displayed a neat summary with links to the original research papers. Traditional AI would take minutes to do this kind of deep analysis, Pichai explained. But with quantum algorithms, we can process vast amounts of data almost instantly. Sarah leaned forward, genuinely amazed. Can I try something? Please, Pichai handed her the phone. Sarah typed in a query about the economic impact of autonomous vehicles, a topic she had struggled to understand for a recent story. Within seconds, the phone provided a clear explanation with key statistics and competing viewpoints clearly labeled. "This is," Sarah trailed off, looking at the device in her hands. "A glimpse of the future," Pichai finished for her. "This is why I believe so strongly in what we're doing. It's not about building fancy tech toys. It's about solving real human problems." The studio was completely silent now. Even Sarah's producer had stopped fidgeting with his clipboard. "I owe you an apology," Sarah said, looking up from the phone. "I laughed because what you were saying sounded impossible. I should have asked better questions instead." Pichai's response caught everyone by surprise. "Actually, I should thank you," he said. "Your reaction is exactly why we need to get better at explaining our work. If smart, informed people like you find these concepts hard to believe, that's on us, not you." His genuine humility shifted the energy in the room. This wasn't the defensive tech CEO many had expected. This was someone who saw criticism as valuable feedback. The greatest scientific advancements throughout history often sounded ridiculous at first, Pichai continued. When Einstein proposed that time could stretch and bend, people laughed. When the first computers were built, experts said they'd never need more than a few of them worldwide. Sarah nodded, finding a new respect for her interview subject. "So what other impossible things is Google working on that might surprise us?" Pichai smiled. "That's a perfect question. Let me tell you about 3 projects that might sound like science fiction today, but could be changing lives within 5 years. As he began explaining, Sarah realized that her worst professional moment was transforming into her best interview yet. The segment that had started with her laughing at Pichai was now a masterclass in clear communication about complex technology. And judging by the messages lighting up the studio's social media feed, viewers were as captivated as she was. For the first time since the interview began, Sarah stopped worrying about going viral. This wasn't about creating a moment anymore. It was about understanding the future. Sarah Chen watched with growing fascination as Sundar Pichai placed 3 small devices on the table between them. The first looked like a thin glass bracelet, the second resembled a credit card, and the third was a small earpiece no bigger than a bean. "These are prototypes," Pichai explained, his voice calm but energized. "Each one represents a different way quantum computing will change everyday life." Sarah's producer was frantically signaling from behind the camera, drawing his finger across his throat, the universal sign for cut. They were already running over their allotted time, but Sarah pretended not to notice. This was too good to interrupt. "Tell me about the bracelet first," Sarah said, leaning forward. Pichai picked it up carefully. "This connects to our health monitoring system. Traditional health devices track simple metrics like heart rate or steps. This analyzes thousands of biomarkers simultaneously." He slipped it onto his wrist. The clear glass immediately changed color, displaying numbers and patterns that shifted in real time. "Right now, it's analyzing my current stress levels, hydration, sleep quality from last night, and even detecting environmental allergens in the studio. The quantum backend lets it process all this data at once, rather than one metric at a time." Sarah's jaw dropped slightly. "May I?" she asked, reaching for it. Pichai nodded and handed it to her. When Sarah put it on, the display changed, adjusting to her body. "It says I'm dehydrated and my cortisol levels are elevated," she read, laughing nervously. "Well, that's not surprising given how this interview started." The studio crew chuckled, breaking some of the tension. "What about this one?" Sarah pointed to the card-like device. "This might be the most important one," Pichai said, picking it up. "We call it the Universal Translator." He pressed a small button on the side and spoke several sentences in Tamil, his native language. The card displayed the English translation instantly on its surface. "Many translation services exist already," Sarah noted. "True, but they require internet connections and work with major languages. This works offline and handles over 200 languages and dialects, including many endangered ones with just a few thousand speakers." He handed the card to Sarah. "Try speaking into it." Sarah spoke a phrase in Mandarin she had learned while reporting in China. The card displayed both English and Tamil translations simultaneously. "The quantum processing handles the complex contextual understanding needed for accurate translation," Pichai explained. "Traditional computers struggle with nuance and cultural context." The studio had grown so quiet that Sarah could hear the air conditioning humming. Everyone was captivated. And the earpiece? Sarah asked, pointing to the final device. This one isn't quite ready, Pichai admitted, but it's possibly the most exciting. You picked it up carefully. We call it the Knowledge Navigator. It connects to a quantum system that has processed virtually all publicly available human knowledge: books, studies, articles, videos, lectures. Like a search engine in your ear? Sarah asked. Much more than that. It understands what you're trying to learn and adapts to your personal learning style. May I demonstrate? Sarah nodded, genuinely curious now. Pichai placed the earpiece in his ear and said clearly, "Explain how CRISPR gene editing works, as if I'm a high school student." He listened for a moment, then smiled. "Now explain it to me as if I have a PhD in molecular biology." Another pause. "Now explain the ethical concerns around CRISPR applications." Removing the earpiece, he handed it to Sarah. "Your turn." With slight hesitation, Sarah put it in her ear. "Explain quantum computing in a way that would help me understand why I shouldn't have laughed earlier." The studio crew held their breath, then broke into gentle laughter as Sarah's eyes widened. She listened for nearly 30 seconds before removing the earpiece. "That was incredible," she said quietly. "It just explained quantum computing using a metaphor about news reporting and information verification. It literally customized the explanation to my profession." Pichai nodded. "That's the power of these systems. They meet people where they are, rather than forcing everyone to become technical experts." As the segment neared its end, Sarah realized something profound had happened. What began as an attempt to challenge Pichai had become a window into the future, a future that suddenly seemed much closer than she had imagined. The studio was buzzing with excitement as the director called for a 5-minute break before the final segment. Sarah Chen removed her microphone and took a deep breath. Her producer rushed over, his earlier frustration replaced with undisguised enthusiasm. "This is gold, Sarah. Absolute gold," he exclaimed. "We got calls coming in from the network executives. They want to extend the interview by another 15 minutes. Sarah nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She watched as Pichai carefully gathered his prototype devices, handling them with the gentle care of someone who appreciated their significance beyond their monetary value. "Mr. Pichai," she said, approaching him, "I'd like to take our final segment in a different direction, if that's okay with you." He looked up with curiosity. "What did you have in mind?" "Everyone knows about Google's success stories, but I'm curious about the failures, the moments that taught you something important." Pichai's expression changed, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "That's actually much more interesting than discussing our successes." When the cameras began rolling again, the atmosphere had shifted. The confrontational edge that had marked the beginning of the interview was gone. In its place was something more authentic, two people having a real conversation. "Welcome back to our extended interview with Google CEO Sundar Pichai," Sarah began. "Mr. Pichai, before the break, you showed us some amazing technology, but I'm curious about the road that led here. Could you share a significant failure that shaped your approach to innovation?" Pichai leaned back slightly, considering the question. "Early in my time at Google, I was leading a project that we were all convinced would change how people use the internet. We called it Google Wave." "I remember that," Sarah said. "It was supposed to revolutionize communication, but it was shut down after just a year." "Exactly," Pichai nodded. "We built something technically brilliant but completely confusing to most users. I learned then that technical genius without human understanding is worthless." He continued, describing how the failure of Wave had transformed his leadership philosophy. "I keep a screenshot of Wave's interface in my office as a reminder. Complexity might impress other engineers, but simplicity is what actually helps people." As Pichai spoke about other failures, products launched too early, opportunities missed because of overthinking, Sarah noticed something changing in herself. Her desire to catch him in a gotcha moment had disappeared. Instead, she found herself genuinely curious about his perspective. "You know," she said during a natural pause, "I came into this interview with some assumptions about tech executives. That you'd be defensive, maybe even arrogant." "And now?" Pichai asked. "I'm wondering if I've been asking the wrong questions all along. We in the media focus so much on the controversies and the competition. but we rarely ask about the actual human thinking behind the technology. Pichai nodded thoughtfully. The biggest ethical questions in technology aren't about specific features or products. They're about the relationship between humans and machines. What we're trying to build at Google isn't just better technology. It's technology that makes us more human, not less. The conversation flowed into a discussion about AI ethics, with Pichai sharing personal concerns that surprised Sarah with their candor. I worry about the same things many critics worry about, he admitted. The difference is that I believe being inside the process gives us a better chance to build safeguards. When Sarah asked about the responsibility that came with Google's power, Pichai didn't dodge the question. There are nights I can't sleep thinking about it, he said quietly. The potential to help is enormous, but so is the potential for unintended consequences. Anyone who isn't humbled by that responsibility shouldn't be in this position. As the segment neared its conclusion, Sarah realized that her viral moment had indeed happened, just not the one she had planned. Instead of catching a tech CEO in an embarrassing gaffe, she had documented a rare moment of genuine human connection and understanding. In the control room, the director whispered to the network executive who had rushed down to witness the unexpected hit interview. Did you ever think we'd see a tech interview go viral for actually teaching people something? The interview ended at 11:42 a.m. By noon, clips were already spreading across social media. By 1:00 p.m., hashtag #PitKatichasara was trending worldwide. By dinner time, the full interview had been viewed over 2 million times on Tech News Network's website, breaking all previous records for a tech segment. Sarah Chen sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through the thousands of comments flooding her social media accounts. She had expected backlash for her early dismissive attitude. Instead, something very different was happening. This is what journalism should be. Read one comment with over 50,000 likes. Someone starts with skepticism but remains open to learning. We watched Sarah's mind change in real time. Another popular comment said, "I finally understand quantum computing, and all it took was a CEO who can actually explain things without jargon. Tech companies should take notes." Not all reactions were positive, of course. Some viewers criticized Sarah's initial approach as disrespectful. Tech blogs debated whether Pichai's demonstrations were genuine breakthroughs or carefully staged PR stunts. But the overwhelming response was one of appreciation for a rare moment of authentic communication about complex technology. Sarah's phone rang. It was Mark, her producer. "Have you seen the numbers?" he asked without saying hello. The network executives are calling it the Pichai effect. "Our viewership has tripled since yesterday." "That's good, right?" Sarah asked, still scrolling through comments. "Good. It's incredible. They're talking about a regular tech segment with you as host. And Google's PR team has been calling nonstop. They want to know if you'd be interested in touring their quantum lab." Sarah set down her phone. "I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't want to seem like I'm suddenly pro-Google after one good interview." "Just think about it," Mark urged. "This could be huge for your career." After hanging up, Sarah opened her laptop and clicked on a new email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read simply, "Thank you for the good questions." The message was from Pichai himself, sent from his personal email. It was brief but thoughtful. "Dear Sarah, I wanted to thank you for turning what could have been an awkward moment into a valuable conversation. Your willingness to move past first impressions and ask deeper questions is rare in today's media environment. If you're ever interested in seeing where those prototypes are developed, our lab doors are open to you, not as a PR opportunity, but as a journalist seeking understanding. Regards, Sundar." Sarah closed her laptop and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, but she ignored it. Across town, in another apartment, a 16-year-old girl named Maya Singh replayed the interview for the third time. She had never been interested in technology or science before. Computers and coding seemed like a world built for someone else, not for a girl from her neighborhood. But something about watching Sarah's journey from skepticism to understanding had sparked something in her. Maya opened a new tab on her browser and typed, "How to learn quantum computing for beginners." At Google headquarters, Pichai was in a meeting with his communications team. They were showing him metrics about the interview's impact, views, shares, sentiment analysis. "This is exactly the kind of communication we've been trying to achieve," said the head of PR. People are actually understanding what we do, not just being impressed by it. Pichai nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The interview had reminded him of something important, something that sometimes got lost in quarterly reports and product launches. Technology only mattered if people understood it, trusted it, and found value in it. And achieving that required not just brilliant engineering but also genuine human connection. Schedule some time with the education team tomorrow, he told his assistant. I think we need to rethink how we explain our technology to the public. The ripples from the interview continued to spread outward, changing paths and possibilities in ways no algorithm could have predicted. 1 week after the viral interview, Sarah Chen found herself standing in the lobby of Google's Advanced Technology Center. The walls were made of glass that changed transparency based on the sunlight, and the floor contained subtle patterns that seemed to shift as she walked. It was exactly the kind of futuristic environment she had expected. What she hadn't expected was her own nervousness. For the past 7 days, Sarah had immersed herself in research about quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and Google's various technology initiatives. Her apartment was covered with notes and diagrams. She had watched lectures, read research papers, and even taken an online crash course in quantum mechanics. Ms. Chen, a young woman approached. I'm Priya, Dr. Pichai's assistant. He's looking forward to seeing you again. Sarah followed Priya through a series of security checkpoints and into an elevator that moved sideways as well as up. When the doors opened, she found herself not in another sterile hallway, but in a large open space filled with plants and natural light. Sundar Pichai was sitting at a simple wooden table near a window, reading something on a tablet. When he saw Sarah, he stood up with a warm smile. Sarah, welcome. I hope the security process wasn't too overwhelming. Not at all, she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Thank you for agreeing to this follow-up. They sat down at the table. There were no cameras, no microphones, no producers signaling from the sidelines. Just two people ready to talk. Before we begin, Sarah said, I want you to know that I've spent this entire week studying quantum computing. I may not understand all of it yet, but I wanted to come prepared. Pichai nodded appreciatively. That means a lot. Most people, even many journalists, wouldn't bother. Sarah opened her notebook. I have questions about quantum entanglement and how it relates to your work on secure communications. But first, I'm curious about something more personal. Why did you agree to the second meeting? Our first interview started with me laughing at you on national television. Pichai considered the question for a moment. 2 reasons, he finally said. First, your questions changed during that interview. They went from trying to catch me in a mistake to trying to understand the technology. That's rare. And the second reason? Sarah asked. I believe technology is at a critical turning point, he explained. For decades, new tech has been adopted first by enthusiasts who forgive its flaws, then gradually by everyone else. But with AI and quantum computing, the impacts are too significant for that slow adoption curve. We need thoughtful journalists who can explain these changes to the public. For the next 2 hours, the conversation ranged from technical details of Google's latest advancements to philosophical questions about technology's role in society. Sarah asked about privacy concerns with AI, the potential misuse of powerful computing tools, and the digital divide between those with access to new technology and those without. What impressed her most was Pichai's willingness to acknowledge problems without easy solutions. When she asked about job displacement due to automation, he didn't offer hollow reassurances. It keeps me awake at night, he admitted. The same technologies that can free humans from dangerous or repetitive work could also cause serious economic disruption. We don't have all the answers yet. As their time drew to a close, Pichai showed Sarah a laboratory where scientists were working on quantum processors. The machines were housed in large containers that kept them at temperatures colder than outer space. One of the scientists, a woman named Dr. Helen Park, explained her work with enthusiasm that reminded Sarah of a child showing off a favorite toy. The quantum state is extremely fragile, Dr. Park explained. We're essentially trying to harness and protect the most delicate phenomenon in physics. Walking back to the main building, Sarah realized something had fundamentally changed in her approach to technology reporting. She had arrived last week armed with skepticism alone. Today, she carried both skepticism and curiosity, a much more powerful combination. Will you write about what you've seen today? Pichai asked as they reached the lobby. Yes, Sarah replied, but not the story I thought I would write. Something better. 3 months after Sarah Chen's second meeting with Sundar Pichai, the Tech News Network studio looked dramatically different. The sleek blue chairs had been replaced with a more comfortable seating area. A large interactive display dominated one wall, and the lighting was warmer, less harsh. Sarah sat across from Maria Lopez, a high school science teacher from Chicago. This was the 12th episode of Sarah's new show, Complex Made Simple, and it was already the network's highest-rated weekly program. So, Maria, Sarah said, you've been using the quantum computing curriculum in your classroom for 6 weeks now. What changes have you seen in your students? Maria's face lit up. It's been remarkable. Students who never showed interest in science before are suddenly staying after school to work on projects. One girl told me she finally feels smart because she understands something her parents don't. Sarah smiled, remembering her own journey from confusion to understanding. After her Google visit, she had pitched the idea for a show that would take complex technology concepts and make them accessible to everyday viewers. The network executives, still riding the wave of her viral interview, had approved it immediately. Each week, Sarah invited both experts and ordinary people to discuss how emerging technologies affected their lives. No jargon allowed, no talking down to the audience. Just clear explanations and honest conversations. Meanwhile, across the country at Google headquarters, Pichai was meeting with his education team. On the wall was a large screen showing Sarah's latest episode. The response to her show has been impressive, said Elena Ruiz, Google's head of educational outreach. Schools are requesting our learning materials faster than we can produce them. Pichai nodded, watching as Sarah used a simple paper model to explain quantum encryption to her guest. She has a gift for this. The ability to make complex ideas feel accessible without oversimplifying them. After the meeting, Pichai returned to his office to find a package on his desk. Inside was a framed photo of him and Sarah from their second meeting, along with a note. Asterisk, this show wouldn't exist without that moment when I laughed, and you chose to teach rather than be offended. Thank you for changing how I see technology, and how I see my role as a journalist. Sarah, asterisk. Pichai placed the frame on his bookshelf next to his most meaningful awards and recognitions. In many ways, this meant more than any industry accolade. Back at the studio, Sarah was wrapping up her interview with Maria. Next week, we'll look at how hospital emergency rooms are using AI to reduce wait times and improve care, Sarah told her viewers. Until then, stay curious. As the cameras stopped rolling, Sarah checked her phone to find an email from a teenager named Maya Singh. The subject line read, "You changed my life. Asterisk, dear Ms. Chen, asterisk. Asterisk, after watching your interview with Mr. Pichai 3 months ago, I started learning about quantum computing. Today, I got accepted into a special summer program at MIT for high school students interested in quantum physics. I never thought science was for people like me until I saw you learning on live TV. You showed me it's okay not to understand everything right away, asterisk. Asterisk, thank you, asterisk. Asterisk, Maya, asterisk." Sarah read the email twice, feeling a tightness in her throat. When she had laughed at Pichai that day, she had been trying to create a viral moment for her career. Instead, she had accidentally created something much more valuable, a public demonstration that learning, even awkward, humbling learning, was something to be celebrated, not hidden. In the Google headquarters cafeteria, Pichai used clips from both interviews during a company-wide talk about communication. Our job isn't to impress people with how smart we are, he told his team. It's to help them understand why our work matters. The moment that could have been Sarah's professional embarrassment had instead become a turning point for her career, for Google's educational approach, and for countless viewers who saw that even the most complex ideas could be understood with the right explanation. What began with a laugh ended with a lesson that continued to spread, proving that sometimes the most powerful demonstrations of genius aren't in creating technology, but in helping others understand it.